Hey everybody, I'm Tom Vassell.
And I'm Chris Yee.
Today we're taking a look at French Quarter. And I would not begrudge you if you couldn't figure that out seeing the cover. It's not the easiest cover to read.
It's easier in person, close.
Anyhow, I'm sure that helped.
Yeah, the narrow frame of focus that camera has.
This is from Matt Riddle, Ben Pinchback, and Adam Hill, and they have designed in the past Motor City, Three Sisters, Fleet the Dice Game. They're known for making not complicated roll and writes, but more in depth, I suppose, than a lot of companies do.
Yeah, they started the two-sheet trend, and now you almost can't find a one-sheet roll and write anymore, Tom. That's old hat.
This is a two-sheet roll and write. Doesn't necessarily feel... Well, you know what? I'm going to go over how it plays, and then we'll come right back. The game takes place over 8 rounds. Each player is going to have one of each of these sheets, and you'll also have some sort of marker that shows you'll be starting in one of the buildings on the map. There are 8 cards in each of these piles, so at the beginning of each round, you'll turn these cards over. You're also going to roll dice, and the number of dice you roll is based on the number of players in the game. You'll put these dice by the card that they match, and then, starting with the first player, and this will pass around from round to round, you'll take a die. When you take a die, you're going to do the following 4 things in order. First, you get to do the actions on the card. So each of these actions will have you cross off an umbrella over here, or cross off one of these, the next to the left in each of these activity lines. Then you get to do the card action. These are going to let you move your pawn around here. So this walk lets you move 1 to 2 space. Well, if you take the carriage, you move 1 to 3, or taxi 1 to 4, and you're moving to adjacent spaces. Although this lets you move to any space on Decatur Street or North Front Street or Dauphine Street. And these cards are always the same. It doesn't matter. So you do that movement action. Then you get to do a building action. The action that you move to will have some icons in it. Some of the buildings, not every building will have icons in them. And you'll get to do whatever those icons allow. Sometimes they allow more activities over here. And then you get to write the number in the little square here. Now, you can only write that number in if the buildings that it's adjacent to are 1 higher or 1 less, or equal. So you have to be equal, plus 1, or put minus 1. So if I write a 6 here, the buildings next to it all need to be a 6 or a 5. So that you have to keep that in mind as you write these numbers in, because numbers that you've written in will score for you at the end of the game. These activities are important to move down these tracks. This is a major way. Whenever you get the umbrellas here are kind of boring, but when you get 3 of them, you get to move down a wild one of these. Most of these are good, except Bourbon Street has a lot of negative things that will happen to you, like it will reduce your walk to 1 space, or you can no longer get performer icons. Performer icons down here, you'll get these from a lot of buildings. Will give you points for how many sets that you have, and also you'll move down this track down here to get all kinds of cool bonuses from getting performers. But these usually come from the socialized card moving down here. However, you might want to move down this track, because each of these tracks, as you move down, there's different symbols that will have you cross off these modifiers here. And then these will give you a modifier times the buildings that you have on a certain street. So like, for example, this is Bourbon Street. And if you have all 3 of these crossed off, every building you've numbered on Bourbon Street is going to give you 5 points. So you have to figure out which of these lines. Some give you special abilities, like this gives you wilds that you can place on the board instead of numbers that go next to anything. Or you're going to keep track of the modifiers, and some space lets you pick a special ability or a modifier. So after 8 rounds, that's pretty much what you do. There's one more thing I didn't mention. And at the beginning of the game, you're going to roll a number randomly, and you're going to pick a spot here where the second line, a parade, is going to be moving from. And whoever picks the socialized die is going to decide whether that parade goes up or down. It might not even move. And everybody will draw a line, and you're going to score points for every one of your buildings that you put a number in that's next to that line, which can be a lot. But it also might not happen if no one picks that card. So everyone's going to be picking 2 cards per round and doing those actions. And after 8 rounds, you'll do the final scoring like I just talked about. And whoever has the most points is the winner. So I was saying it didn't feel like a 2-sheet Because one sheet feels like a board.
It does, yeah.
Now, in fact, I would love, actually, if this was a board game.
Like a central board?
A central board, and you had your own sheet, and then all your people were on the same board. You're moving around. You put like cubes on buildings and stuff. It probably wouldn't work, but
It'd have to be like numbered discs or something, because you have to number
called
them.
cubes. But yes,
Yeah.
you could put dice out there.
Oh, yeah.
Unnumbered discs. I made a dumb joke. Okay, but I don't know. It's fine. I'm just kind of imagining what that'd be like. That would be my only... the components I think were fine, but it is definitely pushes the realm of you need to squint, especially on the board where you move your character.
It is small, and like the places to write on the different building locations. You know, it's not...
We're seeing which street is which. Like, okay, this goes with Bourbon Street. And I'm like, well, where is Bourbon Street? It's not pink so that it matches the pink color. Mm-hmm. And just like kind of looking for things. Some of the buildings, I didn't mention this in overview, but some of the buildings will give extra scoring. There's like 4 buildings. If you get all 4 of them, they'll give you bonus points. And there's some other buildings that give a point. There's one that gives you points if you visit it twice.
Yes, you have to visit it twice, and all the number restrictions still apply, I'm sure. So
I just found myself squinting at that one and squinting at the special abilities at the other one. I don't know what the solution is, to make the game bigger, or maybe for me to just stop playing games where I have to squint. I'm just saying that I found it to be the slightest bit of issue, but I thought that the cards themselves, putting the cards out, it was easy. I didn't have to stare at the cards and be like, that's the card I want, that's the color I want, those are the symbols I want.
The cards threw me off at first because the movement on all of them is the same.
Yes.
So when you have them out there and then you flip over the new one, I was like, wait, that's the same card. And it slowly dawned on me, the symbols, the little bonuses that you check off are different. And I liked that. And this is just like a personal, weird thing. And I was like, oh, that seems like a weird way to do it. But I guess, no, it still really makes sense that, the movement's going to be consistent. That way you always know. If I take a pink die, that means I'm only moving this number of steps. I'm actually glad that the movements don't change. But there are times where you're like, that's a 6. That's exactly what I need. Whew, that party track. I don't really need 2 steps on that party track right now.
It is interesting to have a negative track that is kind of positive in a game like this, and I like that a lot. I don't really want to go up this track, but you could really push it and score a lot of points.
You could, and it's also humorously thematic, because I think the game overall doesn't... Maybe if you love this area, then you'll appreciate all the winks and the nods and everything.
Yeah, I don't know. I've not been there, so...
I've been there very briefly on the road trip across the country, and I appreciate the history, and I appreciate the little thematic touches they tried to put in there, but it doesn't feel terribly thematic, except for that party track. You get sloshed, and you're not able to do things as well. You're not able to appreciate the area as well, and it makes it harder for you. And I thought,
well, the second line also, if the parade's going by your buildings, you're like, yeah, we can see the parade from here.
Right, yeah. So there are those thematic touches that, for me, make this feel a little bit nicer than just like a spreadsheet. One other thing I appreciate, there's a lot of games that do the idea of it becomes harder to place things out as the game goes on. Either you can't, like in Sagrada, or you're messing up scoring opportunities as you put things out like Calico. This one balances it pretty well, where you're not going to fill in that whole board.
Oh, you're not going to even come close.
Right. Yeah, there's just no way to.
There's 16 buildings probably at most.
Right. So I appreciate that. It does become more restrictive as the game goes on, but there's also enough room that you're like, well, I'll just never fill in these 3 buildings over here. I'm fine. You know what I mean?
Yes. On the other hand, though, I don't know that the dice and that whole number thing add anything to me for the game. I get it. You're like, I need a 5. I need to put a 5 next to a 6 or a 4 or whatever you're trying to put it next to. Or the perfect die to go here is a 4 because it's next to both of these buildings. I just find that to be the least interesting part of this game. I like the moving around and getting buildings, and I like picking the card. And I know that the die kind of ties it together because I want that die, which is matching the color I don't necessarily want. Mm-hmm. I just didn't... That part was the least interesting. I thought the most interesting part for me was on the tracks, when you get to those spots where you're like, would you like to do a scoring upgrade or do you want an ability upgrade? And I'm like, well, I really want the ability upgrade, but in the long run,
Right.
the scoring's probably better for me.
But that has that decision point changed, right? At what point have you kind of passed the midpoint of the game, or the point where you need to focus on the scoring? I appreciate having those little extra choices on those tracks.
I think this game is simpler, actually, than Motor City and Three Sisters, the last 2 games in this line.
To be clear, actually, I haven't played those ones.
Yeah, I think you might. Well, if you like this one, I think you might like those. And here's the thing: I like French Quarter. I'm giving it a 7. I think it's very enjoyable. I just like the other ones better because I thought the other ones were more combolicious.
Okay.
I tend to like the combo stuff. Like, I go here, I go here, I go here, I go here. There's a little bit of that in French Quarter, but not nearly as much. French Quarter is more about the marks on this sheet match how I'm building out on this sheet. And the combos are not necessarily happening in the game. It's more about drafting and stuff. And that's fine. It's a different game, and I still enjoy it. I just really like the combos.
Yeah, that's fair. And I don't think every roll and write game needs to have huge chains of combos.
It doesn't.
Yeah, I'm giving this one a 7.5, which is very similar, kind of in line. Where I think it lacks a little bit of the excitement that combos tend to easily kind of give you.
Yeah.
Little mechanisms in here like, I got to see the tuba player. It's good. It is nice set collection, but that's the thing, is it's good, not necessarily like exciting. And so I think it's good. We've been talking about rule books a lot. You've been talking about rule books a lot lately. And I think one of the little touches that I appreciate too that this did was it said you have to place numbers next to the same or one apart. And it gave you a whole table that was like a 4 can be placed next to a 3, 4, or 5. Like those little things that...
I'd rather you over-explain than under-explain.
And I'm grateful for that. So I think they did a good job making this game presentable, except for like the small font and everything. I think they made the game not too hard to learn.
Sure, but again, I think that's a. It's not like they didn't use the box. They did.
Yeah.
I will say I did not play it solo, but I went over the rules of the mayor, and also that you can have blocked off streets. I'm not interested in blocked off streets because I already thought the game was a little constrained as it was, but the solo thing looks interesting, so we didn't have Mike here to play that part for you. But anyway, that is French Quarter from 25th Century. I'm Tom Vassell.
And I'm Chris Yee.
And we're going to New Orleans. We're not. Maybe someday.
I want to Beignet.